The sun was already high in the sky, scorching everything beneath its relentless heat. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction. A sea of golden sand, jagged rocks, and small patches of dry shrubs that offered little shade. The air shimmered with heat, and every breath felt heavy, dry, and suffocating. Somewhere in the distance, the wind carried grains of sand that stung like tiny needles against the skin. It was in this harsh, unforgiving land that a young boy ran with all the strength his small body could muster. His legs were scratched from the rocky paths. His shoes were worn, and his throat burned from thirst. But fear and desperation drove him forward faster than exhaustion could slow him down. The boy's eyes were wide with panic, scanning the horizon for any sign of help. "Please, please!" he shouted, his voice hoarse and trembling, carrying across the vast emptiness. His voice cracked as he called out again, this time louder. "Someone, anyone, help! My mommy, she's tied to a rock under the sun. Please, help her!" Each word was filled with urgency, each plea more desperate than the last. Tears streaked down his dusty cheeks, mixing with sweat and sand. It was then that a figure appeared on the ridge ahead. A man on horseback, moving steadily across the desert trail, noticed the boy almost immediately. The cowboy, seasoned by years of traveling these unforgiving lands, was alert and instinctively cautious. His eyes narrowed, scanning the child from a distance. The boy's cries pierced through the still air, breaking the usual quiet of the desert. Something in the tone, the raw fear, the urgency, the helplessness made the cowboy act instantly. Without hesitation, he guided his horse down toward the boy, riding steadily but carefully, keeping an eye on the surrounding terrain. As the cowboy approached, the boy stumbled forward, tripping over loose rocks and sand, barely managing to stay upright. "Please, help my mommy," he cried again, his voice breaking. "She's tied to a rock, under the burning sun. She's going to die." The cowboy dismounted quickly, his boots crunching against the hard ground. He crouched down slightly to be closer to the boy's height, letting him know he was there to listen, to help. "Calm down, little one," the cowboy said, his voice steady and firm, carrying both authority and reassurance. "Tell me exactly where she is. I'll get her." The boy gasped for air, still trembling, and pointed toward a distant cluster of jagged rocks. "There. Over there. I ran as fast as I could, but I couldn't carry her. They left her tied. Please, hurry." The cowboy quickly assessed the situation. The sun was merciless, shining directly down on the rocky outcrop. There was no shade, no water, and the boy was clearly exhausted. He knew that anyone left exposed in such heat could succumb to dehydration and heat stroke in a matter of hours, or even less. He could feel the tension rising in the air, the urgency almost physical. Every instinct he had honed over years in the desert told him that time was critical. He placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "I'll get her. Don't worry. You stay close. But keep your distance. We need to be careful." The boy nodded, sniffing back tears, relief mingling with fear in his small eyes. The cowboy mounted his horse, adjusting his hat to shield his face from the blazing sun, and started toward the rocks, the boy running alongside as best he could. As they moved, the cowboy studied the signs left behind. Footprints in the sand suggested that whoever had tied the woman there had left in a hurry. The boy occasionally looked back, anxious. But the cowboy kept his gaze forward, eyes sharp, calculating the safest path through the uneven, treacherous terrain. He knew the desert could hide dangers, loose rocks, sudden drops, or even hostile men returning unexpectedly. Every step required vigilance. But there was no time to hesitate. The boy's voice, though quieter now, trembled as he spoke in fits of sobs. "My mommy. She's so brave. But they caught her. I tried to stop them. I really did. But they were too many." His small hands clenched into fists as he recalled the terrifying memory. The cowboy nodded silently, understanding the fear and helplessness that children carry when faced with dangers beyond their control. The mother's story began to unfold in the cowboy's mind, piecing together what the boy could tell between his sobs. She was an Apache woman, strong and determined, known in her community for her courage and resilience. She had been protecting her family from hostile men who wanted to take what was not theirs. When she was caught, she did not scream for mercy, she resisted. And now, she was tied to a rock, exposed to the sun, vulnerable but still alive. That thought strengthened the cowboy's resolve. The desert seemed to stretch endlessly as they pressed on. Heat waves danced off the rocks, creating illusions of water that were not there. The boy stumbled repeatedly, but each time, the cowboy was there to steady him, offering words of encouragement. "Keep moving," he said firmly, but kindly. "You're doing good. Almost there. Just a little further." The boy clung to those words, drawing courage from the cowboy's confidence. Finally, as they crested a small hill, the woman came into view. She was tied to a large rock, her hands bound behind her back, and her ankles secured with thick ropes. Her head drooped, but she lifted it slightly when she heard the approaching voices. The sun had already reddened her skin, and sweat streaked down her face. Her clothes were torn in places, and the ropes had begun to chafe her skin. Despite her suffering, there was a spark in her eyes, a combination of relief, hope, and stubborn determination not to give up. The boy screamed again, running ahead toward his mother. "Mommy! Mommy!" he shouted, tears streaming down his face. The mother looked at him, recognition flooding her expression. She tried to smile through her pain, but the sun and exhaustion made it hard. The cowboy quickly approached, keeping one eye on the distance while assessing the ropes that held her fast. He recognized the urgency immediately. The sun was relentless, and she could not survive much longer in that position. Every second counted. The cowboy knelt beside her, his hands working efficiently to untie the knots, checking carefully but swiftly to avoid causing her more pain. "We've got you," he said gently. "You're safe now. Just hold on." The woman's eyes filled with tears, and she whispered a weak but grateful, "Thank you." The boy pressed close to her, holding her hands, murmuring, "I told you he would come. I told you he would help you." The cowboy stood, scanning the horizon once more to ensure they were not in immediate danger from any returning captors. He guided the mother and child to a nearby shaded spot behind some rocks, offering a brief respite from the scorching sun. Water was scarce, but he shared some from his canteen, carefully giving each of them small sips to rehydrate. In that moment, amidst the harsh desert, the heat and the fear, a bond began to form between the cowboy, the boy, and his mother. It was a bond of trust, courage, and humanity. The cowboy had come into the desert as a stranger, but now he was their protector, their hope, and perhaps the difference between life and death. The boy clung to his mother, exhausted but relieved, while the mother rested against the rock, still weak but alive. The cowboy adjusted his hat, feeling the sun beating down on him, and prepared for the next step. This was only the beginning of their journey to safety. But at this moment, the most critical danger had passed. They had found her, and she was alive. That was enough to give them all a moment of relief and hope in the midst of the relentless, unforgiving desert. The desert was silent again, save for the shallow breaths of the boy, the mother's quiet sighs, and the faint whistle of the wind across the rocks. The sun would continue its harsh journey across the sky, but for now, they had survived, and in survival, there was the first glimmer of something even stronger. The determination to keep going, to fight, and to reach safety together. The desert seemed even harsher now as the cowboy led the boy and his mother away from the jagged rocks. The sun was at its highest, beating down relentlessly, turning the sand into a bright, shimmering ocean. Every step was heavy and exhausting, but the cowboy moved steadily, his eyes scanning the horizon for any danger, while keeping a careful watch on the small family following him. The boy clung to his mother's hand, wobbling on tired legs, and she leaned on him for support when she could. Though her strength was fading, the cowboy's experience in the desert had taught him that danger could appear at any moment, and he stayed alert, listening to every sound, the distant call of a bird, the whisper of wind across rocks, the crunch of sand underfoot. He noticed faint tracks in the sand, signs that whoever had tied the woman to the rock had hurried away. But he also knew that the desert could hide enemies and predators alike, and one wrong step could put them all in danger. Despite the heat and the harsh terrain, the cowboy kept his pace steady, encouraging the boy whenever he stumbled. "Slow and steady now," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You're doing good. Keep your eyes on me. Don't look back too much." The boy nodded, biting his lip, determined not to cry again. He felt a mixture of fear and relief, fear because they were still in the open desert, relief because the cowboy had found them and was helping them escape. The mother walked as best she could, her feet sore and bruised, her clothes damp with sweat. She kept glancing at her son, worried about his little body struggling in the harsh heat. "You're doing well, my love," she whispered, trying to sound brave. "We'll get through this, I promise." The boy squeezed her hand tightly, trusting her words. But inside, he was still scared. The desert was a cruel place, and he had never felt so small and helpless before. As they moved, the cowboy talked to them, asking gentle questions to keep their minds focused and distracted from the sun. "Where are you from, little one?" he asked. The boy blinked, thinking. We live near the mountains," he said slowly. "But the men came and took her. I tried to fight them off, but—" His voice broke again. The cowboy nodded silently, understanding without needing to say more. He had seen fear and bravery in equal measure in this desert, and he could feel the courage that had driven this boy to run so far for his mother. The terrain grew rougher as they moved forward. Sharp rocks and loose stones made the path treacherous. The boy stumbled repeatedly, and each time, the cowboy caught him before he fell. The mother tried to help him too, but her own strength was fading. The sun was unforgiving, and the heat radiated off the rocks, making the air shimmer and creating illusions of water in the distance. It was hard to tell what was real and what was not, and the boy occasionally reached for the mirages, hoping for relief, only to find the sand still dry beneath his fingers. Despite the harshness of the journey, the cowboy remained calm and composed, giving them a sense of safety. "Almost there," he said. "We'll find a place to rest soon. Keep moving." He had spotted a small patch of shade, formed by a cluster of rocks ahead. It wasn't much, but it would offer a brief reprieve from the sun. The boy's eyes lit up at the sight, and he found a little burst of energy to run faster, helping his mother along. As they reached the shaded spot, the mother collapsed against the rock, breathing heavily. The cowboy handed her some water from his canteen, letting her sip slowly. The boy knelt beside her, worried but trying to help. "Drink, Mommy. You'll feel better," he said softly. The mother nodded weakly, grateful for the small comfort. The cowboy poured a little water into the boy's hands too, letting him drink carefully. Hydration was critical now, and he knew that even a small sip could make a difference. While they rested, the cowboy kept watch, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. The desert was silent, except for the occasional rustle of wind and the distant call of birds. It felt as though the whole world had disappeared, leaving just the three of them alone in the scorching heat. Yet, in that silence, the cowboy could hear their breathing, their fear, and their determination. It was a strange mix of vulnerability and strength, and it gave him a renewed sense of purpose. The boy's mother began to tell a little of her story, her voice quiet but steady. She spoke of her life with her son, of the days spent near the mountains, and of the men who had come to take what was not theirs. She spoke of her courage, of the efforts she had made to protect her child, and of her hope that someone would come to help her. The cowboy listened, nodding silently, understanding the depth of her bravery. It was clear that she had fought with everything she had, and now she needed help to survive. The boy listened too, his small hands resting on his mother's shoulders. He felt a mixture of pride and sadness, knowing that his mother had been so brave but had suffered because of it. "Mommy, I'll never let anyone hurt you again," he whispered. The mother smiled weakly, tears glistening in her eyes. "You already tried, my love, and someone else came to help. That's enough." After a short rest, the cowboy helped them continue their journey. He knew that staying in one place for too long could be dangerous. The sun was still strong, and the desert offered few hiding places. Step by step, he guided them through the rocky terrain, keeping a careful watch for signs of returning captors or any other dangers. Every movement was deliberate, calculated, and cautious. As they moved forward, the cowboy shared small pieces of wisdom to keep their spirits up. "The desert can be harsh," he said, "but if you keep your eyes open, if you keep moving carefully, you can get through it. We just need to stay together." The boy nodded, feeling the truth in the cowboy's words. It was hard, but with him leading the way, there was hope. Hours passed as they continued through the desert. The heat remained intense, but the shade of rocks and small shrubs provided brief relief. The mother's strength slowly returned with each sip of water, and the boy's steps grew steadier. The cowboy encouraged them constantly, offering both guidance and reassurance. The journey was not easy, but each step brought them closer to safety, and closer to the possibility of finding help and shelter. Along the way, the cowboy noticed small signs of the desert's life. A lizard scurried across a rock, a hawk circled overhead, and distant mountains appeared faintly on the horizon. These signs reminded him of the resilience of life, even in the harshest conditions. He used these moments to teach the boy about the desert, how to read the land, how to notice changes in the air, and how to stay alert. The boy listened intently, absorbing everything, feeling a sense of wonder amidst the fear and exhaustion. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, the group finally reached a slightly more sheltered area. The rocks formed a small alcove, offering better protection from the sun and wind. The cowboy led them inside, allowing the mother to rest while the boy explored carefully nearby. "Stay close," the cowboy warned gently. "Don't wander too far. We need to keep together." The boy nodded, grateful for the guidance and protection. Sitting in the shade, the cowboy checked their condition again. The mother was still weak, her skin burned by the sun, but she was alive and moving slowly. The boy, though exhausted, remained alert, his small hand holding his mother's as they shared a brief moment of comfort. The cowboy knew that the most dangerous part of the day was over, but he also knew that the journey was far from finished. There were more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome, before they could truly be safe. He looked out at the desert stretching endlessly before them. The heat was less intense now, but the night would bring its own challenges: cold temperatures, darkness, and uncertainty. He made a silent promise to the boy and his mother that he would see them through safely. Together, they had already faced the worst of the day, and together, they would survive what was still to come. The boy rested his head against his mother's shoulder, feeling her warmth and presence. The cowboy sat nearby, watching over them, ready for any danger that might appear. For a brief moment, there was peace in the desert, a quiet relief that they had survived so far. Yet beneath that calm was the awareness that their journey was only halfway done. They would need courage, patience, and determination to continue. But for now, they could breathe, recover, and gather strength for the path ahead. The desert sun slowly began to lower, casting long shadows across the sand and rocks. The cowboy adjusted his hat and prepared for the next stage of their journey, knowing that nightfall could bring new dangers. The mother and her son rested, grateful for the small moments of safety, and silently promising themselves to keep moving, to survive, and to reach a place where they could finally be free from fear. Step by step, sip by sip of water, and word by word of encouragement, the trio moved forward, bound together by courage, trust, and the will to survive. The cowboy had led them this far, and he would continue to lead them through the desert's heat, its rocks, and its endless sun. The boy looked up at him with admiration, and the mother, though exhausted, found hope in his steady presence. They were not alone anymore, they had each other, and that gave them the strength to face whatever lay ahead. The sun was lower now, its light softer but still warm, painting the desert in shades of gold and orange. The air, though slightly cooler, still carried the heat of the day, and every movement required effort. The cowboy led the boy and his mother carefully through the rocky terrain, keeping his eyes sharp for any sign of danger. The journey had been long and exhausting, but now, the moment of truth was near. The place where the mother had been tied to the rock was not far, and the cowboy needed to act quickly before darkness fell or the captors returned. The mother walked slowly, leaning heavily on the boy's small frame when she could, though he struggled to support her. She was still weak from the hours under the sun, but the hope of freedom gave her strength. Every step was painful, yet she refused to give in. Her eyes, though tired, shone with determination. The boy, sensing his mother's exhaustion, whispered words of encouragement. "We're almost there, Mommy." "Just a little further," he said. His small voice carried both hope and fear, a mix that mirrored the desert around them, beautiful but unforgiving. The cowboy motioned for them to stop behind a large rock formation, creating a temporary shelter from the wind and the fading sun. From this vantage point, he could see the area where she had been left, a flat expanse surrounded by jagged stones. His experienced eyes scanned every inch, noting the shadows, the tracks in the sand, and the possible hiding places. He calculated the safest path, knowing that one misstep could alert any returning captors or cause them to stumble and fall. "Stay close to me," the cowboy whispered, his hand gently guiding the boy. "We need to move carefully." The boy nodded, gripping his mother's hand tightly. She smiled weakly at the cowboy, gratitude and trust shining through her tired eyes. They took a deep breath, gathering their courage, before stepping into the open, moving quickly but silently toward the spot where she had been tied. The closer they got, the more the cowboy could see the effects of the sun and the ropes on the mother's body. Her skin, though now shaded slightly, bore the marks of the harsh desert heat, and the rope had left red marks where it had rubbed. Despite her pain, she lifted her head when she noticed the cowboy approaching, her eyes reflecting a mixture of relief, fear, and hope. She had thought she might never see another person come to help her, and now, here was a man who had risked his life to reach her. The boy ran a few steps ahead, unable to contain his excitement and fear. "Mommy, I told you he would come." "I told you," he cried, tears rolling down his cheeks. The mother's eyes filled with tears too, and she whispered, "Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much." Her voice was weak, but the emotion behind it was strong. The cowboy nodded silently, understanding that words were not enough to convey what this moment meant. Action was needed, and he was ready. He knelt beside her, inspecting the ropes carefully. They were thick, strong, and tightly bound, but not impossible to undo. He worked with skilled hands, loosening knots, and carefully sliding the ropes free, mindful of the mother's weakened state. Each movement was deliberate, precise, and careful to avoid causing her further pain. The boy knelt beside them, holding his mother's hand and whispering words of encouragement. "Almost there, Mommy. It's almost over," he said, his voice steady despite the tears. As the last rope fell away, the mother leaned forward, exhausted but free. She pressed her hands against the ground, then slowly straightened, supported by the cowboy's steady arms. The relief in her eyes was overwhelming, and she whispered a shaky, "I'm free. I'm free." The boy clung to her, burying his face in her shoulder, crying with joy and relief. For the first time in many hours, there was a moment of peace, a moment where survival felt possible, and hope had returned. The cowboy stood, scanning the desert once more. He had freed the mother, but the danger was not entirely gone. The desert was vast and open, and nightfall could bring its own challenges: cold, darkness, and unseen hazards. Still, the most immediate threat had passed. He guided the mother and child toward a safer path, away from the flat open space where she had been left. Every step was careful, measured, and deliberate, ensuring they did not stumble or alert any potential threats. The boy whispered softly to his mother, "I knew he would help you." "I knew it." She smiled weakly, holding him close. "You had faith, my little one. And that gave us hope," she said, her voice gentle but filled with emotion. The cowboy walked beside them, keeping them close and steady, silently proud of their courage. The mother and child had endured so much, yet their spirit had not broken. The desert around them seemed alive in its quiet way. Shadows stretched long over the sand. Rocks cast jagged silhouettes, and the wind whispered faintly through the canyons. The cowboy knew every sound, every movement was a potential warning, and he remained vigilant. He pointed out small details to the boy, teaching him to read the desert, how to notice tracks, how to follow paths, and how to move carefully without drawing attention. The boy listened intently, eager to learn, absorbing every word as if it could save their lives. Hours passed as they navigated the uneven terrain. The mother rested occasionally, leaning against the cowboy or the rocks for support. The boy remained close, his small hand always in hers, drawing strength from her presence. The cowboy moved steadily, guiding them, providing water from his canteen, and ensuring that both mother and son stayed hydrated and protected from the fading sun. Every movement, every word of encouragement, kept their spirits alive. As the sun dipped lower, casting a soft, golden glow over the desert, they reached a small outcropping of rocks that offered shade and some protection from the wind. The cowboy helped the mother sit, letting her rest while the boy knelt beside her, still holding her hand. They drank more water, careful not to rush, and allowed themselves a moment of relief. The immediate danger was behind them, and for now, they were safe. The mother looked at the cowboy, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You risked your life for us. Strangers, you saved us." The cowboy shook his head, a small smile on his face. "No thanks needed," he said. "You were brave. Your son was brave. You survived. That's enough." His words were simple, but they carried meaning. He had come into the desert as a stranger, but now he had become their protector, their hope, and their guide. The boy leaned against his mother, exhausted but happy. "I'll never forget you," he whispered to the cowboy. The cowboy placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You're stronger than you think, little one. Remember that, and always stay close to the people you love." The mother smiled weakly, tears in her eyes. "We will never forget you either," she said. As night began to fall, the desert changed. The heat faded, replaced by a cool, gentle breeze. Stars appeared in the sky, twinkling above the rocky landscape. The cowboy knew that they still had a long journey ahead to reach complete safety. But for now, they had survived the most dangerous part. The mother and her child had been freed, and they had hope for the first time in many hours. The cowboy kept watch through the night, ensuring that no dangers approached, while the mother and child rested. The boy slept beside his mother, holding her hand, while the mother rested against a rock, finally allowing herself to relax. The cowboy remained vigilant, eyes scanning the horizon, ready for anything. The desert was unpredictable, but he was experienced, and he knew how to guide them to safety. As the night deepened, a sense of calm settled over the trio. The immediate danger had passed, but their bond had grown stronger. They had faced fear, exhaustion, and uncertainty together, and now they were united by courage and trust. The cowboy had freed them, but they had survived through their own bravery as well. It was a lesson in strength, hope, and the human spirit's ability to endure even in the harshest conditions. By the time the first light of dawn touched the desert, the mother, her son, and the cowboy were ready to continue. Their journey was far from over, but they had proven that even in the most desperate circumstances, courage and trust could carry them through. The mother's freedom had been won, the boy's faith validated, and the cowboy's bravery rewarded by the safe presence of the family he had saved. Step by step, they prepared to move forward, the desert stretching endlessly before them. They were tired, sunburned, and thirsty, but they were alive, and that was everything. With each other's support and the cowboy's guidance, they would navigate the desert, face the challenges ahead, and reach safety. For now, the desert had tested them, but it had not broken them. They had survived, and together, they would continue. The first rays of dawn began to stretch across the desert, painting the sand and rocks in soft shades of gold and pink. The air, cooler now after the long, scorching day, felt like a gift. The cowboy helped the mother and her son stand, giving them time to stretch their tired limbs and regain strength. Though the night had brought some relief from the burning sun, the journey was not over. The desert was vast, unforgiving, and unpredictable, and they still needed to find safety, water, and shelter. The mother rested her hand on her son's shoulder, feeling the warmth and small strength of his hand in hers. "We've come so far," she whispered, almost to herself. Her voice was quiet but carried pride and relief. The boy looked up at her, eyes wide with wonder. "We're together, Mommy. That's all that matters," he said. The cowboy nodded beside them, his eyes scanning the horizon. They had survived the sun, the ropes, and the long trek. Now, survival meant reaching a place where they could rest without fear. They moved slowly but steadily through the desert, the cowboy leading the way. Every step was careful, every movement was deliberate. He knew that the terrain could hide dangers, loose rocks, sudden dips, or even wild animals. The boy followed closely, holding his mother's hand, and she leaned on both of them when her strength faltered. It was a quiet march, the soft crunch of sand beneath their feet the only sound. The desert seemed alive in its silence, watching them as they navigated through the rocky landscape. After some time, the cowboy spotted a small oasis in the distance, a patch of green surrounded by low rocks, with a trickle of water visible in the morning light. Relief swept through him. It was not a large settlement, but it would provide shade, water, and a moment to rest. He motioned to the mother and her son, encouraging them to keep moving. "Just a little further," he said. "We'll be safe soon." The boy's eyes lit up at the sight of water, and he pulled gently on his mother's hand, eager to reach the small oasis. As they approached, they noticed signs of wildlife, birds fluttering near the water, small lizards scurrying across the rocks, and insects buzzing lazily in the morning sun. It was a reminder that life could thrive even in the harshest environments, and it gave the mother hope that she and her son could survive too. The cowboy led them carefully, making sure they avoided the sharp rocks and thorny bushes, and finally, they reached the edge of the water. The mother sank to the ground, letting her feet rest in the cool water. She drank slowly, savoring each sip, and the boy followed suit, splashing gently in the shallow stream as he drank. Relief and joy filled their hearts. The cowboy watched them quietly, a small smile on his face. This moment of peace was hard-earned, and they deserved it. The water refreshed them, eased their exhaustion, and reminded them that survival was possible. While the mother rested, the cowboy gathered small sticks and branches to make a simple fire. Though the sun was rising, he knew that the desert could become cold and dangerous at night. He wanted them to have warmth, safety, and comfort. The boy helped eagerly, fascinated by the small task, and feeling useful for the first time since the ordeal began. The mother smiled at him, her eyes filled with pride. Together, they built a small shelter beside the rocks, offering some protection from the wind and potential wildlife. As the morning progressed, the mother shared more of her story with the cowboy. She spoke of her life before the attack, the simple joys of living near the mountains, the care she had taken to teach her son about the land, and the moments of happiness she had shared with him. Her voice was quiet but steady, filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. The cowboy listened attentively, respecting her words, understanding the strength it had taken to endure what she had faced. The boy sat beside his mother, listening carefully, asking small questions about her past and their life together. It was a time of bonding, of understanding, and of hope. Though the desert had tested them in every way, it had not broken their spirit. Instead, it had revealed the depth of their courage, love, and resilience. The cowboy felt a sense of pride in their determination. They had survived incredible hardship. And now, they were beginning to heal, physically and emotionally. By midday, they had eaten some simple food the cowboy had packed, allowing their strength to return gradually. The mother's wounds, though minor, had been cleaned with care, and the boy rested beside her, occasionally playing with a small lizard that had ventured close. The cowboy kept watch, scanning the horizon, ensuring that no danger approached. The desert was still vast and unpredictable, but this small oasis provided a safe haven, a chance to recover and plan the next steps. As the sun moved across the sky, the mother and her son began to regain energy. Their steps grew steadier, their breathing more relaxed, and their spirits lifted. The cowboy encouraged them to take it slow, to conserve their strength for the journey ahead. "We'll move carefully," he said. "No need to rush. We've come far, and we're going to make it." The boy looked up at him with admiration, feeling safe for the first time in hours. The mother nodded gratefully, trusting the cowboy completely. The hours passed, and they prepared to leave the oasis. They had rested enough to continue, and the cowboy knew that finding a nearby settlement would provide permanent safety. They packed their small belongings, ensuring the mother and son could carry what they needed without exhausting themselves. Step by step, they began moving again, the boy holding his mother's hand tightly, and the mother leaning on the cowboy for support. The journey continued through valleys, around rocky outcrops, and across stretches of open desert. The cowboy guided them carefully, teaching the boy small lessons about survival, how to read the land, where to find signs of water, and how to move without leaving noticeable tracks. The boy listened intently, absorbing everything. It was a moment of learning and growth, of understanding the desert's ways and respecting its dangers. Eventually, in the distance, the cowboy spotted smoke rising faintly against the horizon. A small settlement or outpost lay beyond, a place where they could finally find help, food, and safety. Relief washed over them. The boy ran a few steps ahead, shouting joyfully, "Mommy! Look! People! We're going to be safe!" The mother smiled, tears of happiness in her eyes. "Yes, we're almost there," she whispered, feeling a sense of peace she had not known for hours. As they reached the outskirts of the settlement, friendly faces appeared, welcoming them. Local settlers, seeing the boy and his mother in their state, rushed to help. They provided water, food, and shelter, guiding them into shaded areas to rest properly. The cowboy stayed close, ensuring that they were safe and well cared for. Finally, the mother could sit comfortably, her son by her side, and breathe fully, knowing that the immediate danger was behind them. The cowboy looked at them, his heart swelling with quiet satisfaction. He had risked his life to reach them, to guide them through the desert. And now he saw the results: safety, relief, and hope. The mother turned to him, her eyes shining with gratitude. "We will never forget you," she said softly. "You saved our lives." The boy hugged the cowboy, smiling through his tears. "Thank you. Thank you for helping us," he cried. Even as they rested, the desert still loomed in the distance, a reminder of its harshness and unpredictability. But they had survived it, together. And that was what mattered most. The mother and her son were alive, safe, and beginning to recover. The cowboy had guided them with courage, skill, and compassion. Their ordeal had tested them, but it had also shown them the power of bravery, trust, and human kindness. In the days that followed, the mother and son regained their strength fully. They were able to eat, sleep, and rest without fear. They shared stories with the settlers, recounting the events that had led to their peril and how the cowboy had saved them. Their story inspired admiration and respect, highlighting the courage and humanity of the man who had risked everything to help strangers. The cowboy eventually prepared to leave, his job done. The mother and son hugged him tightly, expressing their gratitude one last time. "We will never forget you," the mother said again. The boy held his hand and whispered, "You're our hero." The cowboy smiled, tipping his hat. "Stay strong, both of you. Take care of each other, and never forget the courage you've shown." As he rode away, the mother and her son watched him disappear into the distance, the sun now fully risen, casting a warm glow across the desert. They had survived the worst. They had been freed, and they had learned that even in the most desperate moments, hope could be found. The bond they shared, strengthened by fear, courage, and trust, would remain forever. Their journey through the desert had ended, but their lives continued, filled with gratitude, hope, and the knowledge that even in the harshest places, kindness and bravery could save lives. The mother held her son close, both of them smiling through tears, knowing that they were safe, together, and ready to face the future. The desert had tested them, but it had not defeated them. They had survived, and in that survival, they had discovered the strength of the human spirit.